The Richest Man in Babylon. A historical sketch of Babylon. No city in history is more glamorous than Babylon. The very name brings to mind images of wealth and beauty. The city's treasures, including gold and jewels, were extraordinary. One might imagine such a rich city would be in a place filled with tropical beauty, surrounded by forests and mines full of resources. But that was not the case. Babylon was located next to the Euphrates River in a flat, dry valley. There were no forests, no mines, and no stone for building. It wasn't even on a natural trade route. The rainfall wasn't enough for farming. Babylon is a great example of how humans can achieve amazing things by making the most of what they have. All of its resources and wealth were created by people. Babylon had only two natural resources: fertile soil and water from the river. The Babylonian engineers achieved one of the greatest feats of engineering by building dams and huge irrigation canals to direct water from the river. These canals stretched far across the dry valley, bringing water to the fertile soil. This is one of the earliest known engineering achievements in history. The crops grown, thanks to this irrigation system, were unlike anything the world had seen before. Luckily, during its long history, Babylon was ruled by kings who focused on building, and not just on conquering and stealing. Although Babylon fought many wars, most of them were small or defensive, aimed at protecting the city from outside invaders who wanted to steal its incredible wealth. The greatest rulers of Babylon are remembered in history for their wisdom, vision, and fairness. Babylon did not have arrogant kings who tried to conquer the entire world just to make other nations bow to their pride. Instead, these rulers focused on building and protecting their city. Babylon no longer exists as a city. Once the people who built and kept it alive for thousands of years left, the city quickly became a forgotten ruin. The site of Babylon is in Asia, around 600 miles east of the Suez Canal and just north of the Persian Gulf. It lies at a latitude of about 30 degrees north of the equator, which is nearly the same as Yuma, Arizona. The climate of Babylon was similar to that of Yuma, Arizona, hot and dry. Today, the valley of the Euphrates, which was once full of people and thriving farms, is now a dry, empty wasteland. Only a little grass and desert shrubs struggle to survive against the blowing sands. The fertile fields, massive cities, and long caravans filled with valuable goods are all gone. The only people living there now are small groups of nomadic Arabs who survive by taking care of small herds of animals. It has been this way since around the beginning of the Christian era. Scattered across the valley are mounds of earth. For centuries, travelers thought they were just natural hills, but archaeologists became interested in them after finding broken pieces of pottery and brick that had been washed down by occasional rainstorms. Expeditions funded by European and American museums were sent to dig and see what could be found. Using picks and shovels, explorers soon discovered that these hills were actually ancient cities, long-lost ruins. They could even be called city graves. Babylon was one of them. For nearly 2,000 years, Desert winds had covered it with dust. Since the city was originally built from brick, its exposed walls had crumbled and returned to the earth. This is what remains of Babylon, the once wealthy city. Now, it is just a heap of dirt, abandoned for so long that no one even remembered its name. It was only rediscovered when archaeologists carefully removed layers of debris from its streets and uncovered the ruins of its once great temples and palaces. Many scientists believe that Babylon and other cities in this valley had the oldest recorded civilization. Clear evidence shows that it existed as far back as 8,000 years ago. One interesting way scientists determined these dates was by studying ancient records. In the ruins of Babylon, they found writings that described a solar eclipse. Modern astronomers were able to calculate exactly when that eclipse happened and used it to connect Babylon's calendar with ours, helping to confirm its timeline. This proves that 8,000 years ago, the Sumerians who lived in Babylonia were already living in walled cities, but no one knows for sure how long such cities had existed before that. The people who lived there were not simple barbarians hiding behind walls for protection. They were intelligent and advanced. According to written history, they were the first engineers, the first astronomers, the first people to develop a written language. As mentioned before, they built irrigation systems that turned the dry valley into rich farmland. The remains of these canals can still be seen today, although most are now filled with sand. Some of these canals were so large that when they were dry, 12 horses could be ridden side by side along the bottom. Their size was similar to the biggest canals found in Colorado and Utah. In addition to irrigating the valley, Babylonian engineers completed another massive project. They built a complex drainage system to dry up a huge area of swampland at the mouths of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, and turned it into farmland. Herodotus, the Greek traveler and historian, visited Babylon while it was in its prime and has given us the only known description by an outsider. His writings give a graphic description of the city and some of the unusual customs of its people. He talks about the rich soil and the large harvests of wheat and barley they grew. The glory of Babylon may be gone, but its wisdom has been preserved for us. We owe this to the way they kept records. Back then, paper had not been invented. Instead, they carefully carved their writing into wet clay tablets. Afterward, the tablets were baked and turned into hard tiles. They were about 6 by 8 inches in size and 1 inch thick. These clay tablets, as they are commonly called, were used much like we use modern forms of writing today. They were engraved with legends, poetry, history, royal decrees, the laws of the land, property titles, promissory notes, and even letters sent by messengers to distant cities. From these clay tablets, we are given a look into the personal, private lives of the people. These clay tablets give us a look into the personal lives of the people. For example, one tablet, probably from a storekeeper's records, says that on a certain day, a customer brought in a cow and exchanged it for 7 sacks of wheat. 3 sacks were given right away, and the other 4 were to be delivered later whenever the customer wanted. Buried safely in the ruined cities Archaeologists have found entire libraries of these tablets, hundreds of thousands in total. One of the most amazing features of Babylon was its huge walls that surrounded the city. The ancient people considered these walls to be one of the seven wonders of the world, along with the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Queen Semiramis is believed to have built the first walls during the early days of the city. Modern archaeologists have not been able to find any trace of the original walls. The exact height of the walls is also unknown. However, based on descriptions from early writers, it is believed that the walls were about 50 to 60 feet tall. They were made of burnt brick on the outside and had a deep, water-filled moat for extra protection. The later, more famous walls were started about 600 years before our Christ by King Nabopolassar. He had such grand plans for rebuilding the city that he didn't live to see it finished. His son, Nebuchadnezzar, whose name is well known in the Bible, completed the work. The size of these walls is hard to believe. According to reliable sources, they were about 160 feet tall, about the same height as a modern 15-story office building. The walls were estimated to be between 9 and 11 miles long. They were so wide at the top that a 6-horse chariot could drive around them. Today, little remains of this massive structure except parts of the foundations and the moat. Besides the damage caused by nature, the Arabs also helped destroy the walls by removing the bricks to use in other building projects. The walls of Babylon were attacked by the armies of nearly every conqueror during that time. Many kings tried to lay siege to the city, but they always failed. The invading armies of that time were powerful and not to be taken lightly. Historians describe these forces as having 10,000 horsemen, 25,000 chariots, and 1,200 regiments of foot soldiers, each with 1,000 men. It often took 2 or 3 years to gather the materials for war and store enough food along the planned route. Babylon was organized like a modern city. It had streets and shops, and peddlers sold their goods in the residential areas. Priests carried out their duties in grand temples. Inside the city was a special area for the royal palaces. The walls around this area were said to be even higher than the walls around the city. The Babylonians were skilled in many arts, including sculpture, painting, weaving, gold working, and making metal weapons and farming tools. Their jewelers created beautiful jewelry, and many pieces have been found in the graves of rich citizens. These items are now displayed in museums around the world. A long time ago, when much of the world was still using stone tools to chop down trees or hunt with flint-pointed spears and arrows, the Babylonians were already using axes, spears, and arrows with metal tips. The Babylonians were skilled traders and money managers. As far as we know, they were the first to invent money as a way to trade, along with promissory notes and written property titles. Babylon was never attacked by enemy armies until around 540 years before the birth of Christ. Even then, the walls of Babylon were not captured. The story of how Babylon fell is very interesting. Cyrus, one of the great conquerors of that time, planned to attack the city and hoped to break through its strong walls. However, advisors to Nabonidus, the king of Babylon, convinced him to go out and fight Cyrus instead of waiting for the city to be surrounded. After the Babylonian army was defeated, it ran away from the city. Cyrus then entered through the open gates and took control without any fight. Over time, the city's power and importance slowly faded. After a few hundred years, it was abandoned and left to the winds and storms, which eventually reduced it back to the desert ground where it had originally been built. Babylon had fallen, never to rise again. But civilization owes a great deal to it. The passing centuries have turned its grand temples into dust, but the wisdom of Babylon still lives on. Its achievements and knowledge continue to inspire us, reminding us of how much one city can shape the future, even after it is gone. Money is how we measure success in life. Money allows us to enjoy the best things life has to offer. Money is easy to get for those who understand the simple rules for making it. Money is controlled by the same rules today as it was when wealthy people filled the streets of Babylon 6,000 years ago. The man who desired gold. Bansir, the chariot maker of Babylon, was feeling very discouraged. He sat on the low wall around his property and looked sadly at his simple home and the workshop where a half-finished chariot stood. His wife often appeared at the open door, giving him quick looks, reminding him that their food was running low and he should be working to finish the chariot. He needed to do this so he could deliver it to his wealthy customer and receive payment. Still, Bansir stayed sitting on the wall. His big, strong body was still, and his mind was trying to figure out a problem he couldn't solve. The hot sun, typical of this valley of the Euphrates, was beating down on him. Sweat gathered on his forehead and trickled down into his chest hair. Beyond his house, he could see the high walls around the king's palace. Nearby, the painted tower of the Temple of Bel rose up into the sky. In the shadow of such impressive buildings stood his simple home, along with many others that were not as clean or cared for. Babylon was a city of contrasts, a mix of wealth and poverty, great buildings and simple homes, all crowded together without any order. Behind him, the wealthy people rode in chariots, while the tradesmen and beggars crowded the streets. Even the rich had to move aside for the long lines of slaves who carried water for the king's gardens. Bansir didn't pay attention to the busy sounds of the city. It was the sound of a lyre being played that caught his attention. He turned and saw his best friend, Cobby, the musician, with a friendly smile on his face. "May the gods bless you with great fortune, my friend," Cobby said, with a respectful gesture. "But it seems they have already blessed you so much that you no longer need to work. I am happy for you. In fact, I would even like to share in your good fortune. Please, could you lend me just 2 small shekels until after the noble feast tonight? You won't miss them before they are returned." "If I had 2 shekels," Bansir replied sadly, "I could not lend them to anyone, not even to you, my best friend. They would be all I have. No one lends their whole fortune, not even to their best friend." "What?" Cobby said in surprise. "You don't have 1 shekel, but you are sitting here like a statue on a wall. Why don't you finish the chariot? How will you feed yourself if you don't finish it? This is not like you. Where is your energy? Are the gods sending you trouble? It must be a punishment from the gods, Bansia agreed. It all started with a dream, a silly dream. I dreamed I was a man of wealth. I had a nice purse filled with coins. I gave shekels to the beggars, bought fine things for my wife, and anything I wanted for myself. I had gold and felt confident about the future. I felt at peace and content. You wouldn't have recognized me as your hard-working friend, nor would you have recognized my wife. She looked young again, with a happy face and no wrinkles. That sounds like a nice dream, Cobby said. But why does such a nice dream make you so sad now? Why indeed? Because when I woke up and remembered that my purse was empty, I felt angry. Let's talk about it. As the sailors say, we are in the same boat. We went to the priests together to learn wisdom. As young men, we shared many happy times. As older men, we have always been good friends. We've worked hard and spent what we earned. We've made a lot of money in the years that passed, yet to enjoy wealth, we only dream about it. Are we just like dumb sheep? We live in the richest city in the world, but we don't have any of it. People say there is no city richer than Babylon, yet we have nothing. After all the years of hard work, you, my best friend, have an empty purse, and I am no better. What is wrong with us? Why can't we have silver and gold, more than enough for food and nice clothes? Think about our sons, Bansia continued. Won't they live just like we did? Won't they and their children live in a city full of treasure but be poor, just like us, eating simple food? This is strange, said Cobby. You have never spoken like this before. I've never thought like this before, Bansia replied. From morning to night, I've worked hard, making the best chariots I could. I've hoped that the gods would see my hard work and bless me with wealth. But they never have. And now I see they never will. That's why I'm sad. I want to be a man with wealth. I want land, cattle, fine clothes, and coins in my purse. I'm willing to work hard for all of that, with all my strength, skill, and mind. But I want my hard work to be fairly rewarded. What's wrong with that? I wish I knew the answer, said Cobby. I'm no better off than you. The money I earn from my music is spent quickly. Sometimes I have to find ways to make sure my family doesn't go hungry. I also wish I could have a big lyre to play the beautiful music I hear in my mind. With such an instrument, I could play music even more beautiful than the king has ever heard. You should have that lyre, said Bansia. No one in all of Babylon could play it better than you. If you could play such sweet music, the king and the gods would be delighted. But how can you afford it when we're both as poor as the king's slaves? Look, here come the water carriers, Bansia pointed out. He saw a group of men carrying heavy water skins, walking up the narrow street from the river. Look at that man leading them, Cobby said. He looks like a very important person from his country. There are many strong men in that line, Bansia agreed. Tall men from the north, laughing black men from the south, little brown men from nearby lands. They all march from the river to the gardens, day after day, year after year. They have nothing to look forward to but hard work and sleep on straw beds, eating only simple food. I feel sorry for them, Cobby. I feel sorry for them too, said Cobby, but you make me see that we aren't much better off, even though we call ourselves free men. That's true, Bansier said. We don't want to keep living like this, year after year, working all the time and getting nowhere. Maybe we can learn how others become rich and do the same things they do, Cobby suggested. Maybe there is something we can learn if we ask the right people, Bansier replied thoughtfully. This very day, I saw our old friend Arcad riding in his golden chariot. He didn't look down on me as many rich people might. Instead, he smiled and waved to me like we were old friends. Arcad is said to be the richest man in all of Babylon, Bansier said. He is so rich that even the king asks for his help with the treasury. I've heard, Cobby said, that Arcad has an income that always fills his purse, no matter how much he spends. Income? That's what I need, Bansier said. I want an income that keeps coming in, even if I'm sitting on this wall or traveling far away. Arcad must know how to make an income. Do you think he could explain it to someone like me? I think he taught his son, Nomasir, Cobby said. I heard that Nomasir went to Nineveh and became one of the richest men there without any help from his father. Now that's an idea, Bansier said with excitement in his eyes. It doesn't cost anything to ask for good advice from a friend. Arcad was always a good friend to me. I'll go to him even if we have no money. We're tired of being poor while there is so much wealth around us. We want to be men of means. Let's go and ask Arcad how we can make an income for ourselves. You're right, Bansier, Cobby said. You're a true friend, always thinking of others. You have many friends because of it. Let's go to Arcad today, and let's bring our other friends who are struggling just like us, so they can learn from Arcad too. We're tired of being poor while there is so much wealth around us. We want to be men of means. Let's go and ask Arcad how we can make an income for ourselves. You're right, Bansier, Cobby said. You're a true friend, always thinking of others. You have many friends because of it. Let's go to Arcad today, and let's bring our other friends who are struggling just like us, so they can learn from Arcad too. 7 Cures for a Full Wallet. Babylon's greatness still lives on. Through the years, it has been remembered as the richest of cities, filled with treasures beyond imagination. But it was not always this way. The wealth of Babylon came from the wisdom of its people. They first had to learn how to become rich. When the good King Sargon returned to Babylon after defeating his enemies, the Elamites, he faced a serious problem. The royal chancellor explained it to him. After many years of great wealth brought to our people, because your majesty built the great irrigation canals and the mighty temples of the gods, now that these projects are finished, the people seem unable to take care of themselves. The workers have no jobs, the merchants have few customers, the farmers cannot sell their crops, the people do not have enough gold to buy food. But where has all the gold gone that we spent on these great projects? Asked the king. I fear, replied the chancellor, that it has ended up in the hands of only a few rich men of our city. It slipped through the fingers of most people as quickly as goat's milk through a strainer. Now that the flow of gold has stopped, most of our people have nothing to show for their work. The king thought deeply for a while. Then he asked, "Why have only a few men been able to collect all the gold?" "Because they know how," answered the Chancellor. "One cannot blame a man for being successful if he knows the way, and it would not be right to take away from a man what he has earned fairly just to give it to others who lack the same ability." "But why," the king asked, "should not all people learn how to gather wealth and become rich themselves?" The Chancellor hesitated. "That may be possible, Your Majesty, but who will teach them?" "The priests cannot, because they do not understand how money is made." "Who in this city knows best how to become wealthy, Chancellor?" asked the king. "Your question answers itself, Your Majesty. Who has gathered the greatest wealth in Babylon?" "Well said, my wise Chancellor. It is Arcad. He is the richest man in Babylon. Bring him before me tomorrow." The next day, as the king ordered, Arcad came before him. Though he was 70 years old, he stood straight and full of energy. "Arcad," said the king, "is it true that you are the richest man in Babylon?" "So people say, Your Majesty, and no one argues otherwise." "How did you become so wealthy?" "By making use of opportunities available to every citizen of this great city." "You had nothing to start with?" "Only a strong desire for wealth. Nothing else." "Arcad," the king continued, "our city is in great trouble because a few men know how to gain wealth and keep it, while most of our people do not know how to hold on to any of the gold they earn. It is my wish that Babylon becomes the richest city in the world. To do this, it must be a city of many rich men. So we must teach everyone how to gain wealth." "Tell me, Arcad, is there a secret to becoming rich? Can it be taught?" "It is practical, Your Majesty. Anything one man knows can be taught to others." The king's eyes lit up. "Arcad, you speak the words I want to hear. Will you help us in this great task? Will you share your knowledge with a school of teachers, each of whom will teach others, until we have enough teachers to educate every worthy citizen of my kingdom?" Arcad bowed and said, "I am your humble servant, my king. Whatever knowledge I have, I will gladly share for the good of my fellow men and the glory of my king. Let your chancellor gather 100 men, and I will teach them the 7 rules that filled my purse, which was once the emptiest in all Babylon." 2 weeks later, as the king commanded, the chosen 100 gathered in the grand hall of the Temple of Learning. They sat in colorful rows, forming a semicircle. Arcad sat beside a small table where a sacred lamp burned, releasing a sweet-smelling smoke. "Look, the richest man in Babylon," whispered one student, nudging his friend as Arcad stood. "He is just a man, like us." "As a loyal subject of our great king," Arcad began, "I stand before you in his service. Because once I was a poor young man who greatly desired gold, and because I gained knowledge that helped me earn it, the king has asked me to share this knowledge with you. I started with nothing. I had no advantage that any of you do not also have. The first place where I stored my wealth was my purse. I hated its useless emptiness. I wanted it to be round and full, making the pleasant sound of gold. So I searched for every way to fill an empty purse. I found 7. To you who are gathered here, I will explain the 7 cures for an empty purse. which I recommend to every man who wishes to gain much gold. Each day, for 7 days, I will share one of these cures with you. Listen carefully to the lessons I give. Discuss them with me. Talk about them among yourselves. Learn these teachings well, so you may also grow wealth in your own purse. First, each of you must wisely begin to build a fortune of your own. Only then will you be ready to teach these lessons to others. I will teach you in simple ways how to make your purses grow fat. This is the first step on the path to wealth, and no man can climb higher unless he first places his feet firmly on this step. Now, we will begin with the first cure. The first cure. Start growing your wealth. Akkad looked at a thoughtful man sitting in the second row. "My good friend, what kind of work do you do?" "I am a scribe," the man answered. "I write records on clay tablets." "That is how I started earning my first coins," Akkad said. "So you have the same chance to build wealth as I did." He then turned to a man with a red face sitting further back. "Tell me, how do you earn your living?" "I am a butcher," the man responded. "I buy goats from farmers, slaughter them, sell the meat to housewives, and the hides to sandal makers." Akkad nodded. "Because you also work and earn, you have the same opportunity to succeed as I did." In this way, Akkad asked many of the students what work they did. When he had heard from them all, he said, "Now, my students, you can see that there are many different jobs that help people earn money. Every worker has a stream of gold coming to him, big or small, depending on his skill. Is this true?" They all agreed it was. Then Akkad continued, "If you want to build wealth, isn't it wise to start with what you already earn?" Again, they agreed. Then Akkad turned to a humble man who had said he was an egg merchant. "If you choose one of your baskets and put 10 eggs in it each morning, but take out only 9 each evening, what will happen over time?" "The basket will eventually overflow," the egg merchant replied. "Why?" asked Akkad. "Because every day I put in 1 more egg than I take out." Akkad smiled at the class. "Does anyone here have a thin, empty purse?" At first, the students looked amused. Then they laughed. Finally, they playfully waved their purses. "Good," Akkad continued. "Now I will tell you the first lesson I learned about making a purse grow fat. Do exactly what I suggested to the egg merchant. Every time you receive 10 coins, use only 9 and keep 1. Your purse will start to grow heavier, and the feeling of its weight in your hands will bring you satisfaction. Do not dismiss my words because they seem simple. Truth is always simple. I promised to tell you how I built my fortune, and this was my first step. I, too, once had an empty purse and cursed it because I had nothing to satisfy my desires. But when I started keeping 1/10 of all I earned, my purse began to grow. The same will happen for you. Now I will tell you something strange, though I do not know why it happens. When I stopped spending more than 9/10 of my earnings, I still managed to live just as well as before. I lacked nothing. And before long, money started coming to me more easily than ever. It seems to be a law of the gods that gold comes more easily to those who save part of what they earn. Likewise, gold avoids those whose purses are always empty. Which do you want more? To spend your money on small pleasures, jewelry, fine clothes, more food, things that are quickly gone and forgotten? Or to build something lasting, gold, land, herds, businesses, investments that bring in steady income? The coins you spend give you the first. The coins you keep give you the second. This, my students, was the first lesson I learned to cure an empty purse. For every 10 coins I earn, I spend only 9. Think about this and discuss it among yourselves. If anyone proves it wrong, tell me tomorrow when we meet again. The second cure. Save your money. On the second day, Arkad spoke to his students again. Some of you have asked me this. How can a man keep 1/10 of all he earns in his purse when the money he earns is not enough for his necessary expenses? Yesterday, how many of you had empty purses? He asked. All of us, the class answered. Even though not all of you earn the same, and some have larger families to support, all your purses were just as empty. Now let me tell you something important about men and all people. It is this. Our necessary expenses will always grow to equal our income unless we do something about it. Do not confuse necessary expenses with your wants. Each of you, along with your families, have more wants than your earnings can satisfy. So, your earnings go to satisfy these wants as much as they can, but you will still have many wants that are left unsatisfied. All people are burdened with more desires than they can fulfill. Do you think that because I have wealth, I can satisfy every want I have? That is a false idea. There are limits to my time. There are limits to my strength. There are limits to how far I can travel. There are limits to what I can eat. There are limits to how much I can enjoy things. I say to you that just as weeds grow in a field, wherever the farmer leaves space for them, desires will grow in a person whenever there is a chance to satisfy them. Your desires are many, but the ones you can satisfy are few. Look carefully at your usual habits of living. Often, you will find certain expenses that could be reduced or even eliminated. Let your rule be this. Always make sure you get full value for every coin you spend. Write down every expense you are thinking about. Choose the ones that are necessary and the ones that can be covered by 9/10 of your income. Cross out the rest and understand that they are just part of that huge group of desires that will go unsatisfied, and do not regret them. Create a budget for your necessary expenses. Keep the 1/10 of your income for your savings. Let this be the goal you are working toward. Continue to adjust your budget and let it help you. Make it your first tool in protecting your growing savings. Then one of the students, dressed in a red and gold robe, stood up and said, I am a free man. I believe that it is my right to enjoy the good things in life. That's why I rebel against the idea of a budget that controls how much I can spend and on what. It seems like it would take away all the fun in life and turn me into nothing but a donkey carrying a heavy load. Arkad replied, Who, my friend, would make your budget? I would make it for myself, the student said. In that case, Arkad said, If a donkey were to make his own budget, would he include jewels, rugs, and heavy gold bars? No, he would only include hay, grain, and water for his long journey in the desert. The purpose of a budget is to help your purse grow fatter. It helps you cover your necessary expenses and, as much as possible, satisfy your other desires. It helps you achieve your most important desires by protecting them from the less important ones. A budget is like a bright light in a dark cave. It shows you where your money is leaking, and it helps you stop those leaks so that you can control your spending for meaningful reasons. So this is the second way to cure a poor purse. Create a budget for your expenses so you can pay for your necessities, enjoy your pleasures, and fulfill your important desires without spending more than 9/10 of your earnings. The third cure. Make your money grow. Look, your once empty purse is now growing full. You have learned to save 1/10 of everything you earn. You have controlled your spending so that your savings continue to grow. Now we must find a way to make your savings work for you and multiply. Gold sitting in a purse may feel satisfying, but it does not grow on its own. The money we save is only the beginning. The real wealth comes from what our savings can earn for us, Arkad said on the third day to his students. So how can we make our gold work? My first attempt at investing was a failure. I lost everything. I will tell you that story later. But my first successful investment was a loan I gave to a man named Agar, a shield maker. Every year, he bought large amounts of bronze from faraway lands to make his shields. However, he did not have enough money to pay for it all at once, so he borrowed from those who had extra coins. He was a trustworthy man. He always repaid his loans, along with extra money, as a fee for borrowing. Every time he paid me back, I loaned him my original money again, along with the extra amount he had given me. This way, my savings grew, and so did the profits I made. It was a great feeling to see my money return to me, larger than before. I tell you, my students, a man's wealth is not in the coins he keeps in his purse. True wealth is in the steady income he builds, the golden stream of money that keeps flowing into his hands. That is what every person wants. That is what each of you desires, a source of income that keeps coming, whether you are working or traveling. I have built great wealth, so much that people now call me a very rich man. My early loans to Agar were my first lesson in making money grow. With the knowledge I gained, I expanded my investments. At first, I had only a few sources of income, but later, I had many. A golden stream of wealth continued to flow into my purse, giving me the power to use my money wisely. Look, from my small earnings, I created a great collection of gold coins, each one working for me and making more gold. Just as my coins worked for me, their profits also worked, and those profits produced even more profits. Over time, my income grew larger and larger. Gold multiplies quickly when it earns a fair return, as this example will show. A farmer, when his first son was born, took 10 silver coins to a moneylender. He asked the lender to hold and invest the money for his son until he turned 20. The moneylender agreed and promised to increase the money by 1/4 of its value every 4 years. Since the farmer had set this money aside for his son, he asked that the extra earnings be added to the original amount instead of taking it out. When the boy turned 20, the farmer returned to the moneylender to check on the savings. The lender explained that because of the power of compound interest, the original 10 silver coins had now grown to 30.5 coins. The farmer was pleased. Since his son did not yet need the money, he decided to leave it with the lender. When the son turned 50, the farmer had already passed away. The moneylender then gave the son his final payment, 167 silver coins. So, in 50 years, the money had multiplied nearly 17 times. This, then, is the third lesson for making a purse grow fat. Make every coin you earn work for you. Let your money reproduce just like the animals in the fields, so it may bring you a steady stream of wealth that will never stop flowing into your purse. The fourth cure. Protect your money from being lost. Bad luck often finds those who have money. Gold in a man's purse must be protected, or it will be lost. That is why it is wise to first save small amounts and learn to protect them before we are trusted with larger amounts. So spoke Arkad to his class on the fourth day. Anyone who owns gold will be tempted by opportunities that seem to promise great profits. Often, friends and relatives eagerly invest in such opportunities and encourage others to do the same. The first and most important rule of investing is to protect your original money. Is it wise to chase big earnings if there is a risk of losing everything? I say no. Risk often leads to loss. Before you invest, study carefully to make sure you can get your money back safely. Do not be fooled by your own desire to get rich quickly. Before you lend money to someone, make sure he is capable of paying it back and has a good history of doing so. Otherwise, you might unknowingly be giving him a free gift of your hard-earned money. Before you invest in any business, first learn about the risks that may come with it. My own first investment was a disaster. I had saved money for a year and entrusted it to a brickmaker named Asmur. He was traveling across the sea to Tyre and agreed to buy rare jewels from the Phoenicians for me. We planned to sell them upon his return and share the profits. But the Phoenicians were tricksters and sold him worthless pieces of glass instead of real jewels. My money was lost. Today, with the knowledge I have gained, I would immediately see how foolish it was to trust a brickmaker to buy expensive jewels. That is why I give you this advice based on my own experiences. Do not be too confident in your own knowledge when investing your money. It is much better to seek advice from those who are experienced in making money grow. Such advice is free if you ask for it, but it can be as valuable as the gold you are considering investing. In fact, its true value is equal to the money it helps you save from being lost. This, then, is the fourth lesson for making a purse grow full. And it is very important because it prevents your purse from becoming empty again once you have filled it. Protect your money from loss by investing only in safe places where you can get it back if needed and where you will receive a fair profit. Consult with wise men. Seek advice from those who know how to handle money wisely. Let their knowledge help protect your treasure from unsafe investments. The fifth cure. Turn your home into a valuable investment. If a man sets aside 9 parts of his earnings to live and enjoy life, and if he can wisely invest any part of this without harming his well-being, his wealth will grow even faster. So spoke Arcad to his class during their 5th lesson. Too many men in Babylon raise their families in poor and unpleasant places. They pay large sums to strict landlords for small rooms where their wives have no space to grow the flowers that bring them joy, and their children have nowhere to play except in dirty, crowded alleys. A family cannot fully enjoy life unless they have a piece of land where children can play in clean soil, and where a wife can grow not only beautiful flowers, but also fresh, healthy herbs to feed her family. It brings happiness to a man's heart when he eats the figs from his own trees and the grapes from his own vines. Owning his own home, caring for it, and taking pride in it fills a man with confidence and motivates him to work harder. That is why I say that every man should own the house he lives in. It is not beyond any hard-working man's ability to own his home. Has our great king not expanded the walls of Babylon so much that there is now plenty of unused land available for purchase at a very fair price? And I tell you, my students, that moneylenders are happy to help men who want to buy land and homes for their families. If you can show that you have saved up a reasonable portion of the cost, they will gladly lend you the rest to pay the brickmaker and the builder. Then, once your house is built, you can repay the moneylender just as regularly as you used to pay rent to a landlord. But unlike paying rent, each payment you make will reduce what you owe until in just a few years the debt is fully paid. Then, my friends, you will feel great happiness, for you will own valuable property. Your only remaining cost will be the small taxes paid to the king. And your wife will take more trips to the river to wash your robes, knowing that each time she returns, she can bring back a goat skin full of water to pour over the growing plants in your garden. Owning your own home brings many blessings. It lowers your cost of living and allows you to save more of your earnings for enjoyment and personal desires. This, then, is the 5th lesson for making a purse grow full. Own your own home. The 6th cure. Make sure you have income in the future. Every man's life moves from childhood to old age. This is the natural path of life, and no one can avoid it unless the gods call him early to the afterlife. Because of this, I say that every man should prepare for the future when he is no longer young and strong. He must also make sure that his family will be taken care of if he is no longer with them to provide and support them. Today, I will teach you how to ensure that your purse stays full even when you are older and cannot work as much. This is how Arkad spoke to his students on the sixth day of lessons. A wise man who understands how to grow his wealth should also think about his future. He should plan carefully and make investments that will remain safe for many years. These investments should be available when the time comes that he will need them. There are many ways a man can prepare for his future while keeping his money safe. One way is to hide his wealth in a secret place. But no matter how well he hides it, there is always a chance that thieves will find and steal it. Because of this risk, I do not recommend this method. Another way is to buy houses or land. If a man chooses wisely, their value will remain steady or even increase over time. The money earned from these properties, either through rent or selling them, can provide for his needs later in life. A man may also choose to lend small amounts of money to a money lender and allow it to grow over time. The money lender will pay him interest, which will help his wealth increase even more. I know a sandal maker named Ansan, who told me how, for 8 years, he deposited 2 silver coins with his moneylender every week. Recently, the moneylender gave him an accounting of his savings, and Ansan was overjoyed. His small, regular deposits, combined with the interest they earned, had grown into a total of 140 silver coins. To encourage him further, I showed him with my knowledge of numbers that if he continued saving 2 silver coins each week for another 12 years, his savings would grow to 4,000 silver coins. This would be enough to support him comfortably for the rest of his life. When even small, regular deposits can create such great wealth, no man should neglect to prepare for his old age and the protection of his family. No matter how successful his business or investments may be today, the future is uncertain and wise planning is necessary. I wish I could say even more about this. I believe that one day, wise men will create a plan where many people can contribute small amounts of money regularly, and in return, if one of them passes away, their family will receive a large sum. I see this as something very useful and would highly recommend it if it existed. But for now, such a plan does not yet exist, because it would need to last beyond the lifetime of any one person or business. It would need to be as strong and reliable as the king's throne. Still, I believe that someday such a plan will be created and will be a great blessing to many people. Even a small payment could ensure that a man's family is left with a fortune if he were to die. However, because we live in the present and not in the future, we must use the methods available to us today. That is why I strongly advise every man to plan wisely for his later years. A man who has grown old with an empty purse, or a family who has lost their provider with no means of support, faces great hardship. This, then, is the 6th cure for a lean purse. Plan ahead for your old age and for the security of your family. The 7th cure. Improve your skills to make more money. Today, my students, I speak to you of an important way to grow your wealth. But I will not talk about gold. Instead, I will talk about you, the men beneath these colorful robes who sit before me. I will speak of the thoughts and actions that can help or hinder your success. Not long ago, a young man came to me asking for a loan. When I asked why he needed money, he said his earnings were too low to cover his expenses. I told him that this made him a poor choice for a lender because he had no extra income to repay a loan. What you need, I told him, is to earn more money. What are you doing to improve your ability to earn? I am doing all I can, he replied. 6 times in 2 months, I have asked my master for a raise, but he refuses. No man can ask more often than that. We may smile at his thinking, yet he had something important. He truly wanted to earn more. This is a good and necessary desire. Before any success, there must be desire. Your desires must be strong and clear. General wishes are weak. If a man simply wishes to be rich, he will likely fail. But if he sets a clear goal, such as earning 5 gold coins, he can work toward it. Once he learns how to achieve that, he can aim for 10, then 20, then 1,000, and in time, he will become wealthy. This is how riches grow, first in small amounts, then in greater sums as a man learns and improves his ability. Desires must be simple and clear. If they are too many, too vague, or beyond what a man can achieve, they will lead to failure. As a man becomes better at his work, his ability to earn increases. When I was just a humble scribe, earning a few copper coins each day, I noticed that others earned more. I decided that no one would surpass me. I quickly discovered why some men succeeded more. They were more focused, more dedicated, and worked harder. So I did the same. Soon I could carve more tablets in a day than most men. My skill was rewarded, and I did not have to ask my master 6 times for recognition. The more wisdom we gain, the more we can earn. A man who seeks to improve his skills will be rewarded. If he is a craftsman, he should study the methods of the best in his trade. If he is a lawyer or healer, he should seek advice and knowledge from others in his field. If he is a merchant, he should look for better goods at better prices. The world is always changing because wise men seek to improve their skills and better serve their customers. I urge you all to stay ahead and not fall behind. A man must also live with honor if he respects himself. He must pay his debts as quickly as possible and not buy what he cannot afford. He must take care of his family so they may speak well of him. He must create a will so that if the gods call him, his wealth is fairly divided. He must help those who suffer misfortune within his ability. He must be kind and thoughtful to those he cares about. So, the 7th and last way to make your purse full is to learn new skills, keep studying, grow wiser, and act in a way that makes you proud of yourself. When you do this, you will believe in yourself more and reach the goals you carefully choose. These are the 7 ways to stop your purse from being empty. From my long life and experience, I tell everyone who wants to have more money to follow them. There is more gold in Babylon than you can imagine. There is enough for everyone to have their share. Go and use these lessons so you can do well and become rich, as you should. Go and teach these lessons so that all good people in our great city can also enjoy its wealth. Meet the goddess of good fortune. If a man is lucky, You can't predict how much good luck he will have. Throw him into the Euphrates, and he might come out with a pearl in his hand. Babylonian proverb. The desire to be lucky is something everyone feels. People in ancient Babylon wanted it just as much as people today. We all hope to be blessed by the goddess of good luck. But is there a way to meet her and earn her favor? Is there a way to attract good luck? This is exactly what the people of ancient Babylon wanted to figure out. They were clever and thoughtful men, which helped make their city one of the richest and most powerful of its time. In Babylon, there were no schools or universities, but they had a place of learning. It was as important as the king's palace, the hanging gardens, or the temples. You won't find much about it in history books, maybe not even a mention, but it played a big role in the thoughts of the people. It was called the Temple of Learning, and it was where the wisdom of the past was shared by teachers. It was also a place where people discussed popular topics. Everyone was equal there, from slaves to princes. One of the people who spent time there was a wealthy man named Arcad, who was known as the richest man in Babylon. He had his own room, where many men, young and old, would gather to talk and debate different topics. One evening, let's listen in and see if they knew how to attract good luck. The sun had just set, a red ball of fire behind a haze of desert dust, when Arcad walked to the platform where his group was waiting. About 80 men were already there, lying on small rugs. More people were still arriving. Arcad said, "What shall we talk about tonight?" After a short pause, a tall cloth weaver stood up, hesitant to speak. "I have a topic I'd like to discuss, but I'm not sure if it's a good one," he said. Arcad and the others encouraged him to continue. "Today I was lucky," the weaver said. "I found a purse full of gold pieces. I want to continue being lucky. Since I know everyone here wants that too, I suggest we talk about how to attract good luck." "That's a great topic," Arcad said. "Some people think good luck just happens by chance, like an accident, while others believe the goddess Ashtar brings it to those she favors. Let's hear what you all think. Can we find ways to attract good luck?" Yes, let's discuss it," the group replied excitedly. Arcad continued, "Let's begin by hearing from anyone who has found treasures or valuables without effort. Has anyone had that kind of luck?" The room went silent, and no one spoke up. "Nothing," Arcad said. "It seems that kind of luck is rare. Then where should we continue looking?" A young man, well-dressed, stood up and said, "When we talk about luck, don't our thoughts turn to gambling? Isn't that where people try to win the favor of the goddess, hoping she'll bless them with big winnings?" He sat down, and someone called out, "Don't stop. Tell us more. Did the goddess favor you at the gambling tables? Did you win big, or did you lose your gold to the dealer?" The young man laughed and replied, "I have to admit, she didn't seem to notice me there. How about the rest of you? Has anyone had luck at the tables? Let's hear about it." Arcad smiled. "It's important to consider all sides of this. We can't ignore gambling, as many men feel the desire to take a risk with a little money, hoping for a big reward." Another man shouted, "That reminds me of the races yesterday. If the goddess helps at the gambling tables, she must also help at the races. where the chariots and horses are exciting. Arcad, you bet on the grey horses, but everyone knows our own bays are unbeatable. Did the goddess whisper in your ear to bet on the greys, knowing the black horses would cause the bays to stumble and the greys would win? Arcad smiled at the banter. Why would the goddess care about a man's bet on a horse race? To me, she's a goddess of love and dignity, who helps those in need and rewards the deserving. I believe she's not found at gambling tables or racetracks, where men tend to lose more than they win. She's more likely to be found in places where men's work is meaningful. He continued, in farming, honest trade, and all of man's work, there is always a chance for profit. It might not always happen, because sometimes things go wrong, like bad weather or poor judgment. But if a man keeps working hard, he will usually see a reward. In gambling, the situation is different. The odds are stacked against you. The game is designed to favor the dealer, not the players. Arcad explained, let's think about dice games. Each time you bet, you choose which side of the dice will land face up. If you pick the red side, the dealer pays you 4 times your bet. But if any other side lands face up, you lose your bet. The game master always keeps 1/5 of all the bets. How could anyone expect to win consistently in a game like that? Still, some people do win big sometimes, one of the listeners said. That's true, Arcad agreed, but I wonder if those lucky wins really bring lasting value. Among the successful men I know in Babylon, none of them got their start from gambling. Let's think about the successful people you know. Can anyone point to someone whose success came from gambling? There was silence, and then one man joked, "Are you talking about the gamekeepers?" "If you can't think of anyone else," Arcad replied, "then how about yourselves? Do any of you know anyone who has made a fortune from gambling?" There were groans from the back of the room, followed by laughter. "Clearly, we're not looking for good luck in gambling," Arcad said. "So let's look elsewhere. We haven't found it in finding lost wallets. We haven't found it in gambling. And I must admit, I've lost more coins at the races than I've won. Now let's think about our jobs and businesses. When we make a profit, don't we think it's because we worked hard for it? Not because of luck? Perhaps we're missing something. Maybe the goddess is helping us without us realizing it. Who else has something to add?" An older merchant stood up, smoothing his white robe. "If you don't mind, Arcad, I'd like to share my thoughts. If, as you have said, we take credit for our own hard work and skills for our business success, why not also think about the successes we almost had? These would have been rare moments of good luck if they had actually happened. But because they didn't, we cannot count them as our rewards. I'm sure many of you here have had similar experiences. Here is a good idea. Who among you has had good luck just out of reach, only to see it slip away?" Many people raised their hands, including the merchant. Arcad pointed to him. "You suggested this idea, so we would like to hear your story." The merchant began. "I will gladly share a story that shows how good luck can come close to a person only to slip away, leaving regret. Many years ago, when I was young, just married and beginning to earn well, my father came to me one day and strongly encouraged me to invest in something. The son of one of his close friends had found a piece of land just outside the city walls. It was high above the canal, so no water reached it. The son of my father's friend had a plan to buy the land, build 3 large water wheels powered by oxen to bring water to the soil, and then divide it into small plots to sell to people in the city for their herb gardens. But he didn't have enough money to finish the project. Like me, he was a young man, earning a decent income. But his father had a large family and little money. So, he decided to find a group of men to invest in the project. 12 men would each give 1/10 of their earnings to fund the project until the land was ready to sell. Once it's sold, the profits would be shared equally among the investors. "Son," my father said, "you are now a young man. It is time to start building an estate for yourself so you can become respected. I want you to avoid the mistakes I made." "I will follow your advice, father," I replied. "Then I advise you to do what I should have done when I was your age. Save 1/10 of your earnings and invest it. With that 1/10 and its returns, you will build a valuable estate before you reach my age." "Your words are wise, father. I want to be rich, but my earnings are already used for many things. I hesitate to follow your advice. I thought the same at your age, but many years have passed, and I still have not started. Opportunity is right before you, my son. Do not wait. Go tomorrow to the son of my friend and offer him 1/10 of your earnings for this investment. Act now, for opportunity does not wait. Once it is gone, it is gone." In spite of my father's advice, I hesitated. There were beautiful new robes just brought by traders from the East, robes that were rich and colorful. My wife and I really wanted them. But if I invested 1/10 of my earnings, we would have to give up these luxuries and other things we wanted. I delayed until it was too late. Much to my regret, the investment turned out to be far more profitable than anyone expected. "This is an interesting story," said a man from the desert. "To build an estate, you must begin somewhere. That start could be as small as a few pieces of silver saved for investment. In my youth, I used 1 piece of silver to buy a young calf, and that was the beginning of my wealth." Taking that first step to build an estate is the luckiest thing that can happen to anyone. Some take that step early in life and leave those who wait behind. Had our friend the merchant taken that step when he was young, he would be much wealthier now. And if our friend the cloth weaver takes that step now, it will be the start of great success. "I thank you," said a stranger. "I am Syrian. My words may not be clear, but I want to call this merchant a name. Maybe it is not polite, but I wish to call him that. If I say it in Syrian, you may not understand. Please, someone tell me the word you use for a person who puts off what is good for them." "Procrastinator," someone called out. "That's him," shouted the Syrian, waving his hands excitedly. "He does not take action when opportunity comes. He waits. He says, 'I have too much to do now. I'll talk to you later.' Opportunity does not wait for such a slow person. If a person wants to be lucky, they must act quickly. Any person who does not act when opportunity comes is a procrastinator, just like this merchant." The merchant stood up and bowed with a smile. "I admire you, stranger. You don't hesitate to speak the truth. Now let us hear another story about opportunity, Arkad called out. Who else has an experience to share? I have one, said a man, in red, middle-aged, and a buyer of animals, especially camels and horses. I will tell you about an opportunity that came to me one night when I least expected it. Perhaps because of this, I let it slip away. You will be the judge. After a long and disappointing 10-day journey looking for camels, I returned to the city only to find the gates locked. While my slaves set up the tent for the night, an old farmer came to me. Like us, he had been locked outside the city. Sir, I see you are a buyer, he said. I have a fine flock of sheep that I must sell quickly. My wife is very sick, and I must go home right away. I will sell them to you at a very reasonable price. Though it was dark, and I couldn't see the flock, I could hear them bleating, and it sounded like a large group. After spending 10 days unsuccessfully searching for camels, I was eager to make a deal. The farmer was in a hurry and offered a very good price, so I agreed to buy the sheep. But I can't count them tonight, I told him. We'll count them at dawn and settle the payment then. The farmer begged me, please let me take 2/3 of the price now, and you can pay the rest tomorrow after counting them. I trust my slave to help you. But I refused to pay that night. In the morning, when the gates opened, 4 buyers rushed out looking for flocks, offering far more than I had agreed to pay. The farmer made almost 3 times the price I had offered. This is an unusual story, Arkad commented. What lesson do you think it teaches? The lesson is to pay promptly when we are sure the deal is good, said a wise saddle maker. When a deal is right, we must act quickly. We are often tempted to change our minds, especially when things seem too good to be true. But the first decision is usually the best. I've learned that if I don't act fast, I risk losing a good opportunity. I agree, said the Syrian. In every story, opportunity flies away because people hesitate. Every time, the person delays. How can anyone succeed like that? Wise words, the buyer agreed. In both of these stories, procrastination led to missed opportunities. But this is not unusual. The spirit of procrastination is inside everyone. We all want riches, but when opportunity comes, procrastination tells us to wait, and by listening to it, we become our own enemies. In my younger days, I didn't understand what procrastination was. I thought it was poor judgment or stubbornness. Later, I realized it was simply the habit of waiting when action was needed. Once I saw this, I hated it, and with effort, I beat it. Just like no one would let a thief steal their grain, no one should let procrastination steal their success. The merchant nodded. Like the buyer, I too had to recognize and defeat procrastination. It became an enemy that tried to steal my opportunities. The story I shared is just one of many where procrastination stole my luck. But once I understood it, I was determined to beat it. Every man must master procrastination before he can succeed. You are right, Arkad agreed. I have seen many generations try to find success. Opportunities came to all of them, but some took action and moved forward, while others hesitated and fell behind. Arkad turned to the cloth weaver. You suggested we talk about good luck. What do you think about the subject now?" The cloth weaver replied, "I used to think of good luck as something that might happen by chance, but now I see that good luck comes from accepting opportunities. In the future, I will make the most of every opportunity that comes my way." "You have understood the truth," Arkad said. "Good luck follows opportunity. Our merchant friend would have found great fortune had he accepted the opportunity, and the buyer would have enjoyed good luck if he had acted quickly." From our discussion, we've learned that good luck comes when we act on opportunities. Those who seize opportunities attract good fortune. Action is the key to success. The 5 Laws of Gold. A bag full of gold or a clay tablet with wise words written on it? If you could choose between the two, which one would you pick? By the flickering light from a fire made of desert shrubs, the sun-tanned faces of the listeners shone with curiosity. "The gold, the gold," said all 27 of them at once. Old Kalabab smiled knowingly. "Listen," he said, raising his hand. "Can you hear the wild dogs outside in the night? They howl and cry because they are hungry. But if you feed them, what do? They fight and show off. Then they fight and show off some more, not thinking about tomorrow when they will surely be hungry again. Just like that, the sons of men act. If they are given a choice of gold and wisdom, what do? They ignore the wisdom and waste the gold. Then, the next day, they cry because they have no more gold. Gold is meant for those who know its rules and follow them." Kalabab pulled his white robe closer around his thin legs because a cool desert wind was blowing. "Because you have worked so hard for me on our long journey, because you took good care of my camels, because you worked without complaining across the hot desert sands, and because you fought bravely against the robbers who tried to steal my goods, I will tell you the story of the 5 Laws of Gold. This is a story you have never heard before. Listen carefully to what I say. If you understand and follow these rules, you will have much gold in the days to come." He paused for a moment. Above them, the stars sparkled in the clear desert sky. Behind the group, their tents were set up tightly against the wind. Nearby, bales of goods were stacked carefully, covered with skins. Some camels lay in the sand, chewing on their food, while others snored loudly. "You have told us many good stories, Kalabab," said the chief packer. "We look to your wisdom to guide us when our work with you is finished." "I have only told you of my travels in strange lands," Kalabab replied. "But tonight I will tell you the wisdom of Arkad, the wise and rich man." "We have heard much about him," said the chief packer. "He was the richest man to ever live in Babylon." "Yes, he was the richest, and he became that way because he was wise in handling gold more than any man before him. Tonight, I will tell you of his wisdom, as it was shared with me by Nomasir, his son, many years ago in Nineveh, when I was just a young man. My master and I had stayed late one night in Nomasir's palace. I had helped my master bring many fine rugs to Nomasir, who chose the ones he liked best. Once he was happy, he asked us to sit and drink a special wine that was fragrant and warming, though it made my stomach feel strange as I was not used to such strong drinks. In Babylon, it is common for wealthy fathers' sons to stay with them, waiting to inherit their estates. Akkad did not think this was a good idea. So, when his son Nomasir came of age, he called him to him and said, "My son, I want you to take over my estate one day. But first, you must prove that you are capable of managing it wisely. So I want you to go out into the world and show that you can earn gold and gain respect from others. To help you get started, I will give you two things I did not have when I was young and poor, working to build a fortune. First, I give you this bag of gold. If you use it wisely, it will help you build your future. Second, I give you this clay tablet with the 5 laws of gold written on it. If you follow these laws, they will guide you to success and security. Return to me in 10 years and tell me how you have done. If you have succeeded, I will make you the heir to my estate. If not, I will give it to the priests who will trade it for blessings for my soul." So Nomasir set off with his bag of gold, the clay tablet wrapped in silk, his slave, and his horses. 10 years passed, and Nomasir returned to his father's house. His father hosted a great feast in his honor, inviting many friends and family. After the feast, Nomasir stood before his parents to report on his journey, just as he had promised. It was evening. The room was full of smoke from the oil lamps, and the air was hot and still. Slaves fanned the air with long palm leaves. A serious mood filled the room. Nomasir's wife and children, along with friends and relatives, sat behind him, eager to hear his story. "My father," Nomasir began, bowing, "10 years ago, you told me to go out into the world and become a man. You gave me gold and wisdom to help me succeed. But I must admit, I did not handle the gold well. It slipped away from me as quickly as a rabbit running from a hunter." His father smiled kindly. "Continue, my son. I am interested to hear everything." I decided to go to Nineveh, believing it was a growing city with opportunities. I joined a caravan and made many friends, including 2 men who owned a beautiful white horse that was faster than any horse I had ever seen. As we traveled, they told me about a man in Nineveh who owned a horse that could never be beaten in a race. This man was so sure his horse was the fastest in Babylon that he would bet any amount of money that it could outrun any other horse. These men invited me to join them in a race, promising me a chance to win a lot of money. I was excited by the idea, but our horse was beaten badly, and I lost a lot of my gold. Nomasir's father laughed. Later, I found out that these men tricked me. They were part of a scheme to deceive travelers like me. The man in Nineveh was their partner, and they shared the winnings from the bets. This taught me my first lesson about being careful with my gold. Not long after, I became friends with another young man in the caravan. He was from a rich family, and like me, he was looking for a good place to settle in Nineveh. Soon, he told me that a merchant had died, and his store, full of valuable goods, could be bought cheaply. He convinced me to buy the store's goods, saying he would bring his gold later to become our partner. I bought the store's goods with my gold, but he delayed going to Babylon, and in the meantime, I made poor business decisions. Eventually, I had to sell the store's goods for almost nothing. After that, I had a very difficult time. I tried to find work, but had no skills. I sold my horses, my slave, and my extra clothes just to have enough food and a place to sleep. But still, poverty got closer every day. During these hard times, I remembered the confidence you had in me, my father. You sent me out to become a man, and I was determined to do so. Then I remembered the tablet you had given me with the 5 laws of gold. I read them carefully and realized that if I had followed these laws, I wouldn't have lost my gold. I learned the laws by heart, and I promised myself that when good fortune smiled on me again, I would make wiser choices, guided by your wisdom instead of my inexperience. For the benefit of all of you here tonight, I will now read the wisdom my father gave to me 10 years ago. Here are the 5 laws of gold. 1. Gold comes easily and in increasing amounts to anyone who saves at least 1/10 of their earnings to build a future for themselves and their family. 2. Gold works hard and grows for the wise owner who finds good opportunities to invest it, just like animals multiply in the field. 3. Gold stays safe with the cautious owner who invests it wisely and listens to the advice of experienced people. 4. Gold slips away from the man who invests in things he doesn't understand or in businesses that aren't proven to be safe. 5. Gold runs away from the man who tries to get too much too quickly, or listens to tricksters, or who trusts his own inexperience and romantic ideas when investing. These are the 5 laws of gold, written by my father. I say they are worth more than gold itself, and I will show you why through the rest of my story. He turned to face his father again. I've told you about how poor and hopeless I became because of my lack of experience. But there is no string of bad luck that lasts forever. Mine ended when I got a job managing a group of slaves building a new outer wall around the city. Using the first law of gold, I saved a little from my first wages, adding to it whenever I could until I had a piece of silver. It was slow work because I still needed to spend money to live. But I was careful because I wanted to make back all the gold you gave me, Father, before the 10 years were up. One day, the slave master, who had become a good friend, said to me, "You are careful with your money and don't waste what you earn. Do you have any gold saved that is not making more gold for you?" "Yes," I replied. "I really want to make back the gold you gave me, Father, and I fear I'll lose what I've saved if I don't do something with it." "If you trust me, I can teach you how to make your gold work for you," he said. "In a year, the outer wall will be finished, and the great bronze gates will be needed to protect the city. There is no metal in Nineveh to make the gates, and the king hasn't thought about providing any. Here's my plan. We can all pool our gold and send a caravan to get copper and tin from the mines far away. When the king asks for metal for the gates, we can sell it to him for a good price. If the king doesn't want to buy it, we can still sell the metal elsewhere for a fair price." I saw this as a way to follow the 3rd law of gold and invest my savings with wise people. It worked. The plan succeeded, and my little bit of gold grew. Over time, I became part of the group again, this time in other ventures. They were experienced men, who knew how to handle gold wisely. They carefully discussed every idea before agreeing to invest, and they wouldn't risk their gold on anything that wasn't certain to bring them profit. Things like horse races or partnerships with people who didn't know what they were doing weren't even considered. They could easily see the dangers in those ideas. From these men, I learned how to invest gold safely and make it grow. As the years passed, my wealth grew faster and faster. I not only made back what I lost, but I also gained much more. Through all my failures, my struggles, and my successes, I've tested the wisdom of the 5 laws of gold, and I've found them to be true every time. For those who don't know these laws, gold rarely comes and quickly disappears. But for those who follow these laws, gold comes and works like a faithful servant. Nomasir paused and motioned to a slave standing at the back of the room. The slave brought forward 3 large leather bags, one at a time. Nomasir took one of the bags and placed it on the floor in front of his father. He spoke again. "You gave me a bag of gold from Babylon. Look, I now return to you a bag of Nineveh gold of equal weight. It's an equal exchange, as anyone will agree. You gave me a clay tablet with wisdom. In return, I give you 2 bags of gold." He placed the other 2 bags on the floor in front of his father. "I do this to show you, my father, how much more valuable I consider your wisdom than your gold. But who can measure wisdom in bags of gold? Without wisdom, gold is quickly lost by those who have it. But with wisdom, gold can be gained by those who don't have it, as these 3 bags of gold show. I am very happy, Father, to stand before you and say that because of your wisdom, I have become rich and respected by others." The father smiled and placed his hand on Nomasir's head. "You've learned your lessons well, my son. I am lucky to have you as my heir." Kalabab finished the story and looked at his listeners closely. "What does this story mean to you?" he asked. "Which of you can go to your father or the father of your wife and give an account of how wisely you've handled your money? What would they think if you said, 'I've worked hard, earned much, and learned a lot, but I have little gold left. Some I spent wisely, some I spent foolishly, and much I lost through bad decisions'? Do you still think it's just random that some men have lots of gold and others have none? You're wrong. Men have gold when they know and follow the 5 laws of gold. Because I learned these laws when I was young and followed them, I've become a wealthy merchant. It wasn't magic that helped me build my wealth. Wealth that comes quickly can easily be lost, but wealth that stays and brings true enjoyment comes slowly because it's built on knowledge and steady effort. Earning wealth isn't hard for a thoughtful person. The real challenge is keeping it over time, which is where the true value lies. The 5 laws of gold offer a great reward if you follow them. Each law has deep meaning, and so you don't forget them. I will now repeat them. I know them by heart because when I was young, I could see their value and I was determined to learn them fully. The first law of gold. Gold comes easily and in increasing amounts to any person who saves at least 1/10 of their earnings to build wealth for their future and their family. Anyone who saves 1/10 of their earnings regularly and invests it wisely will surely create a valuable estate that will provide for them in the future and will also protect their family. If the gods take them to the world of darkness, this law always says that gold will happily come to such a person. I can truly say this from my own experience. The more gold I save, the more easily it comes to me, and in greater amounts. The gold I save earns more, just like yours will, and that money earns even more. And that is the result of the first law. The second law of gold. Gold works hard and happily for its wise owner who puts it in profitable jobs, growing like the flocks of the field. Gold is a willing worker. It is always eager to grow when the chance comes. For every person who has gold saved, opportunities will appear to use it for the best. As time goes by, it grows in surprising ways. The third law of gold. Gold stays with the careful owner who invests it under the advice of wise men. Gold stays with the careful owner, just as it runs away from the careless owner. A man who asks wise people for advice on how to handle gold quickly learns not to risk his wealth, but instead to keep it safe and enjoy its steady increase. The fourth law of gold. Gold slips away from the man who invests it in businesses or projects he doesn't know well, or that are not approved by those skilled in managing gold. For a man who has gold but doesn't know how to handle it, many opportunities will seem like good chances to make money. Too often, these opportunities are risky and can lead to losses. If wise people analyze these ideas, they will show little chance for profit. So, an inexperienced gold owner who trusts his own judgment and invests in things he doesn't understand often finds his judgment is wrong and he loses his wealth. Wise is the man who invests his money with the advice of skilled people who know how to manage gold. The fifth law of gold. Gold runs away from the man who tries to force it to make impossible profits, or who listens to the tempting advice of tricksters and schemers, or who trusts it to his own inexperience and unrealistic dreams in investing. Exciting proposals that sound like adventure stories often come to the new gold owner. These ideas seem to make gold magically grow into impossible amounts. But listen to the wise people, for they know the risks behind every plan to quickly get rich. Don't forget the rich men of Nineveh, who would not risk losing their gold or tie it up in bad investments. Final words of the story. This ends my story of the 5 laws of gold. By sharing it with you, I've also shared the secrets of my own success. But these are not secrets. They are truths that every man must learn and follow if he wants to move out of the group of people who, like wild dogs, must worry every day about where their next meal will come from. Tomorrow, we will enter Babylon. Look, see the eternal fire burning above the temple of Bel. We are already close to the golden city. Tomorrow, Each of you will have gold, the gold you have earned with your hard work. 10 years from now, what will you be able to say about your gold? If there are men among you like Nomasa who will use a part of their gold to build an estate and follow the wise guidance of Arkad, 10 years from now, it is a safe bet that, like Arkad's son, they will be rich and respected by others. Our wise actions stay with us through life, to bring us happiness and help us. Likewise, our unwise actions follow us to cause us pain and trouble. Sadly, they can't be forgotten. At the top of the things that trouble us are the memories of what we should have done, the opportunities we had and did not take. Babylon's treasures are rich, so rich no one can measure their value in gold. Every year, they grow richer and more valuable. Like the treasures of every land, they are a reward, a rich reward waiting for those men who have a purpose and decide to claim their fair share. In your own desires, there is a magical power. If you guide this power with your knowledge of the 5 laws of gold, you will share in the treasures of Babylon. The Gold Lender of Babylon. Rodan, the spearmaker from the ancient city of Babylon, had never seen so much gold in his life. 50 pieces of gold, more than he could have imagined. The weight of it in his leather wallet felt heavy in his hand as he walked down the king's highway. The sound of the gold pieces clinking together made him smile. It was the happiest sound he had ever heard. For years he had been working hard, making spears for the royal guard, but never had he received such a generous reward, 50 pieces of gold. It was unbelievable. What should he do with it? What could he do? Rodan walked for a while, lost in thought, trying to imagine all the things he could buy. A big house with gardens, land to farm, maybe even a chariot to race through the city. His mind raced. But one thing became clear. He didn't know the first thing about handling this much gold. He had no idea what to do next. After a few days of thinking about it, Rodan decided to go to Mathon's shop. Mathon was a gold lender, a man who made his living from buying and selling jewels, fine fabrics, and, of course, lending gold to those who needed it. Rodan had known Mathon for years, and he had always admired the way the man seemed to handle his wealth and business with ease. Maybe Mathon could offer him some advice. When Rodan arrived at the shop, he didn't waste time looking at the expensive fabrics or glittering jewelry on display. Instead, he walked straight to the back of the shop, where Mathon was lounging on a rug, eating dinner and being served by a slave. As soon as Mathon saw him, he raised an eyebrow and chuckled. "Ah, Rodan, to what do I owe this visit? I usually have people come to me for gold, not advice. What trouble are you in this time? Did a woman catch your eye, or did you lose a game?" "No, nothing like that," Rodan said, shaking his head. "I need your advice. I've come into some gold, and I don't know what to do with it. I was hoping you could help me figure it out." Mathon looked at him with curiosity. "So, you've got gold, huh? I see. Well, I've always known you as a man who works with spears, not gold. But I'll listen. Tell me what's going on." Rodan explained that the king had awarded him 50 pieces of gold as a reward for his work on a new spear tip. At first, he was thrilled, but now his sister had come to him, asking if he could lend it to her husband, Araman. Araman had dreams of starting his own business, and she believed the gold could help him get started. But Rodan was unsure. Should he lend it? What if Araman couldn't pay it back? He was torn. Mathon listened carefully, then nodded slowly. Gold, my friend, is both a blessing and a curse. It can bring great power, but it can also bring you more trouble than you ever wanted. There's a saying in the marketplace: gold will buy you anything, but it won't buy you peace of mind. Let me tell you a story about a farmer from Nineveh who understood the language of animals. Maybe it will give you some perspective. Rodan, curious, settled onto a cushion while Mathon began his story. Once, there was a farmer in Nineveh who had the ability to understand the language of animals. One day, while he was working in the fields, he overheard his ox and donkey talking. The ox was complaining to the donkey about the heavy load he had to pull all day. The donkey, who had a reputation for being lazy, offered the ox a piece of advice. Pretend to be sick tomorrow, and you won't have to work. I'll pull the plow for you. Rodan chuckled at the thought of the lazy donkey, but Mathon continued, serious now. The ox agreed, and the next day he pretended to be sick. The donkey, thinking he was doing a favor, was forced to pull the plow instead. By the end of the day, the donkey was exhausted and angry. He regretted ever offering the ox the advice. Next time, the donkey thought, I'll keep my ideas to myself. Mathon looked at Rodan, his expression thoughtful. The lesson here is simple, but important. Helping someone isn't always as easy as it seems. Sometimes when you try to take their burden away, you end up carrying it yourself. Lending your gold to someone, especially when you're not sure they'll repay you, can be a heavy load. Be careful who you help. Rodan nodded, understanding the point, but still uncertain about Araman. So what should I do about my sister's request? I don't want to disappoint her, but I'm worried. Mathon smiled knowingly. You're a smart man, Rodan. I can tell you're not rushing into anything. Here's what I've learned over the years of lending gold. First of all, always ask for something in return. Not just for your gold, but for your peace of mind. A token. Something to remind you that the loan is real. If the person can't give you anything in exchange, they probably won't pay you back. Mathon led Rodan to a chest filled with all sorts of strange tokens, things people had given him when they borrowed money. There were necklaces, trinkets, tools, even some old promises written on pieces of clay. Some of these tokens had real value, and others were just reminders of failed loans. These tokens, Mathon explained, are like insurance. They're not worth much, but they remind the borrower of their debt and me of what I gave. Rodan picked up a shiny bronze necklace from the chest. What's this one for? He asked. That belonged to a woman whose husband borrowed gold from me, Mathon said. She needed the money for her son's education. The son promised to repay me, but he was dishonest and never did. I learned that when people make emotional decisions, their judgment is often clouded. Rodan listened carefully, beginning to understand. So, if Araman wants to borrow the gold, he should give me something in return. But what if he doesn't have anything? Mathon looked thoughtful. That's the tricky part. If Araman doesn't have anything of value to offer, you have to think carefully. Does he have a solid plan for using the gold wisely? Does he know how to make it grow? If not, lending him the gold could be a risk. Rodan admitted that Araman didn't have much experience with business. He's never really run anything before, he said, feeling more certain about his doubts. Mathon nodded. In that case, you'd be wise to hold on to your gold. A business idea is only as good as the person behind it. If they're not prepared or experienced, the chances of success are slim. If Araman can offer you something valuable, like a plan or security, then it might be worth considering. But if not, then it's better to keep your gold safe. Rodan took a deep breath, realizing what Mathon was saying made sense. He didn't want to risk his hard-earned wealth on a gamble. I'll talk to my sister, he said, feeling more at ease. I'll explain to her that I'm willing to help, but only if Araman has a solid plan. If not, I can't risk my gold. Mathon smiled approvingly. That's the way, Rodan. Be careful with your gold. It's a powerful tool, but it can also cause more problems than you expect if you're not wise in how you use it. If you lend it out, make sure it's to someone who knows what they're doing, and make sure they have something to offer in return. Rodan left Mathon's shop with a clearer mind. He knew what he needed to do now. He would help his sister, but only if Araman had a solid plan and could offer something in return. And from that day on, Rodan was more careful with his gold, using it wisely and making sure it was never a burden, but a tool for growth and success. The Walls of Babylon. Old Banzar, a warrior from a long time ago, stood guard at the entrance to the top of the ancient walls of Babylon. Above him, brave soldiers were fighting hard to hold the walls. The future of the great city, with its hundreds of thousands of people, depended on them. From behind the walls came the sounds of the battle, shouts of soldiers, the thundering of thousands of horses, and the loud banging of the battering rams as they pounded against the gates. In the street behind the gates, a small group of spearmen waited, ready to defend the entrance if the gates broke. There weren't many of them because the main army of Babylon was far away, led by the king on a big mission against the Elamites. No one expected the city to be attacked while the king was gone, so the defenses were weak. But unexpectedly, the mighty Assyrian army had come from the north. Now, Babylon's walls had to hold, or the city would be lost. Around Banzar, large crowds of scared citizens gathered, anxiously waiting for news of the battle. They watched in silence as wounded and dead soldiers were brought out of the passageway. This gate was the main point of attack. After circling the city for 3 days, the enemy had suddenly focused their strength on this gate. The defenders on top of the wall fought off the attackers who tried to climb up using ladders and platforms. They used arrows, burning oil, and spears to stop them. The enemy responded with thousands of arrows, trying to overwhelm the defenders. Banzar had a good view of everything. He was close to the action and heard about each wave of attackers being pushed back. An old merchant came up to him, trembling with fear. Tell me, tell me, the merchant begged. They can't get through, can they? My sons are with the king, and there's no one left to protect my wife. They'll steal all my goods and leave us with nothing. We're too old to fight. We'll starve. Please tell me they can't get through. Don't worry, good merchant, Banzar replied. The walls of Babylon are strong. Go back to your market and tell your wife the walls will protect you, just like they protect the king's treasures. Stay close to the walls, though, to avoid the arrows flying over. A woman with a baby in her arms stepped forward as the merchant left. A woman with a baby in her arms stepped forward as the merchant left. Sergeant, what's happening? What's the news from the top? I need to reassure my husband. He's sick from a terrible wound, but he still wants to protect me with his armor and spear. He's so afraid of what the enemy will do if they get in. Don't worry, mother, Banzar told her. The walls of Babylon will protect you and your baby. The defenders are fighting bravely and using burning oil to stop the enemy from climbing. Yes, I hear the noise and the battering rams at the gates, the woman replied. Tell your husband that the gates are holding strong and the ladders are being stopped by our spears, Banzar reassured her. Go back to him and stay safe. Banzar stepped aside to let reinforcements pass by, their armor clanking and shields shining. A little girl, frightened by the sounds of the battle, tugged on his belt. Tell me, soldier, are we safe? She asked. I hear all the noises and see the wounded men. What will happen to our family? My mother, little brother, and the baby? Banzar, looking down at her, put his hand on her head. Don't be afraid, little one. The walls of Babylon will keep you and your family safe. The queen herself made these walls to protect people like you. They've never been broken. Go back to your family and tell them they have nothing to fear. Every day, Banzar stood at his post, watching more reinforcements march up the passageway, ready to fight until they were wounded or dead. The streets stayed full of people waiting for news, and Banzar always answered with confidence, "The walls of Babylon will protect you." For weeks, the battle raged on without stopping. Banzar's face grew even grimmer as the passageway behind him became a messy, blood-stained area where the wounded were carried up and brought down. Every day, the attackers' bodies piled up in front of the walls, and every night, their comrades carried them away to bury them. After 4 long weeks, the enemy's attacks began to fade. The first light of day revealed the dust from the retreating Assyrian army. The defenders let out a mighty cheer, and it was echoed by the people in the streets. The whole city rejoiced, and the sound of their victory filled the air like a storm. From the top of the Temple of Bel, a column of smoke rose into the sky, carrying the message of victory far and wide. Babylon had held strong against a fierce enemy. The walls of the city, which had been built over 100 years ago, had once again proven their strength. They had kept the city safe from those who wanted to take its treasures and enslave its people. Babylon had survived through the centuries because of its protection. It couldn't afford to be without it. The walls of Babylon showed how much people need safety and security. Today, our need for protection is just as strong. But now, instead of walls made of stone, we have insurance, savings accounts, and smart investments to protect us from life's unexpected troubles. We can't afford to be without good protection. The Camel Seller of Babylon. The hungrier you get, the clearer your mind becomes, and you also become more aware of the smells of food. Tarkad, the son of Azur, knew this well. For 2 whole days, the only food he had eaten were 2 small figs he had stolen from a garden wall. He couldn't take any more because an angry woman had chased him down the street, her sharp cries still echoing in his ears. As he walked through the market, they helped him resist the urge to grab more tempting fruit from the baskets of the market women. He had never realized how much food was brought to the markets of Babylon, or how good it all smelled. Leaving the market, he walked over to the inn and paced back and forth in front of it. Maybe he would run into someone he knew, someone who might lend him a copper coin that would win him a smile from the grumpy innkeeper and a generous meal. Without the copper, he knew he would be unwelcome. Lost in thought, Tarkad suddenly found himself face to face with the one person he most wanted to avoid, the tall, bony figure of Dabasir, the camel trader. Of all the people from whom Tarkad had borrowed money, Dabasir made him feel the most uncomfortable because Tarkad had never been able to repay him on time. When Dabasir saw him, his face lit up. "Ah, Tarkad, just the person I've been looking for. It's time you paid me back the 2 coppers I lent you a month ago, and also the silver from before. We're lucky to meet, boy. What do you say?" Tarkad stuttered, and his face turned red. He had nothing in his empty stomach to give him the courage to argue with Dabasir. "I'm sorry, very sorry," he mumbled, "but today I have neither copper nor silver to repay you." "Then get it," Dabasir insisted. "Surely you can find a few coppers and a silver coin to repay your father's old friend who helped you when you were in need." "It's because bad luck is chasing me that I can't pay," Tarkad said. "Bad luck. You would blame the gods for your own weakness. Every man who cares more about borrowing than repaying brings trouble on himself. Come with me, boy, while I eat. I'm hungry, and I'll tell you a story." Tarkad hesitated at Dabasir's blunt words, but at least it was an invitation to enter the inn. Dabasir led him to a corner of the room, and they sat on small rugs. When Kauskor, the innkeeper, came over smiling, Dabasir spoke freely as usual. "Bring me a leg of goat, roasted and juicy, bread, and all the vegetables. I am hungry, and I want a lot of food. Don't forget my friend here. Bring him a jug of cool water, for the day is hot." Tarkad's heart sank. He would have to sit here, drinking water, while Dabasir enjoyed the entire goat leg. He said nothing. He couldn't think of anything to say. But Dabasir didn't remain silent. He waved cheerfully to the other customers, all of whom knew him, and continued. "I heard from a traveler just returned from Urfa about a rich man who has a piece of stone so thin that you can look through it. He placed it in his window to keep out the rain. It's yellow, this traveler says, and he was allowed to look through it. The world outside looked strange, not like it really is. What do you think, Tarkad? Do you think the world could look different from what it really is?" "I suppose so," Tarkad answered, his attention mostly on the leg of goat in front of Dabasir. "Well, I know it's true because I've seen the world through a colored stone myself. The story I'm about to tell you is how I came to see it in its true color again." The other diners leaned in closer to hear, and soon they formed a circle around the two of them, eating noisily, brushing Tarkad with their bones. He sat without food. Dabasir didn't offer him a bite, nor even a piece of bread that had fallen on the floor. "The story I'm about to tell," Dabasir began, pausing to take another big bite of goat, "is about my early life and how I became a camel trader. Did anyone know that I was once a slave in Syria?" The crowd murmured in surprise, and Dabasir savored their reaction. "When I was young," Dabasir continued after another hearty bite, "I learnt my father's trade, making saddles. I worked with him in his shop and took a wife. Being young and not very skilled, I didn't earn much, just enough to support my wife in a modest way. But I wanted more than I could afford. Soon, shopkeepers would trust me to pay later, even though I couldn't pay at the time. I didn't understand that when you spend more than you earn, you're asking for trouble, but I indulged myself in fine clothes and luxuries for my wife, beyond our means. At first, it seemed fine, but soon I couldn't pay both for living and for the things I had bought. Creditors came after me, and I borrowed from friends but couldn't repay them. My life became miserable. My wife went back to her father's house, and I decided to leave Babylon and try my luck in another city. For 2 years I wandered, working with caravan traders, but eventually I joined a band of robbers who attacked unarmed caravans. It wasn't a noble path, but I didn't see it then. We did well the first time, capturing gold, silks, and other treasures. We took it to Guinea and spent it all. The second time, we weren't so lucky. After a successful raid, we were attacked by a tribe that protected the caravans. Our leaders were killed, and we were taken to Damascus and sold as slaves. I was bought for 2 silver coins by a Syrian desert chief. They shaved my head and dressed me in a loincloth, just like the other slaves. I thought it was an adventure, until my master took me to his 4 wives and told them they could choose me to become a eunuch. At that moment, I realized how hopeless my situation was. The desert men were fierce, and I had no means of escape. As I stood there, the 4 women examined me. Sira, the oldest, had an expressionless face. The next was a beautiful woman who looked at me as if I were nothing. The younger ones giggled as if it were a joke. I stood there for what seemed like ages, waiting for a decision. Finally, Sira spoke. "We already have enough eunuchs, but we don't have many camel tenders, and they're not good at the job. I need a camel driver to take me to visit my sick mother." My master turned to me and asked, "What do you know about camels?" I tried not to sound too eager and replied, "I can make them kneel, load them, and lead them on long trips without tiring. If needed, I can repair their gear." My master smiled. "Well, if you think you can, take him, Sira, to be your camel tender." And so I became Sira's camel driver and led her camel on a journey to her sick mother. During the trip, I thanked her for helping me and told her I wasn't born a slave, but the son of a free saddle maker from Babylon. I shared much of my story with her, and her response was surprising. "How can you call yourself free when your weakness brought you here? If a man has the soul of a slave, he will become one, no matter his birth." But if he has the soul of a free man, he will be respected, even in misfortune. I lived with the other slaves for a year, but I never felt like one. One day, Sarah asked, "Why do you always sit alone when the other slaves gather?" I told her, "I'm thinking about what you said. Maybe I do have the soul of a slave because I can't join them." "I too sit apart," she confessed. "My dowry was large, and my husband married me for it. But he doesn't care about me. A woman wants to be desired, and I am barren. Because of that, I too must sit alone. If I were a man, I would rather die than be a slave." "What do you think of me now?" I asked her. "Do I have the soul of a slave or the soul of a free man?" "Do you want to repay your debts in Babylon?" she asked. "Yes," I answered, "but I don't know how. If you're willing to let time pass without trying to repay, then you have the soul of a slave. No man respects himself if he doesn't repay his debts." I was moved by her words, but didn't know how to repay my debts. 3 days later, Sarah's maid came to me and said, "Sarah's mother is very sick. Saddle the camels for a long trip. There's food in the kitchen tent." I packed the camels, but I noticed the provisions seemed too much for such a short trip. As we traveled, I wondered what was happening. After we arrived at her mother's house, Sarah dismissed the maid and said, "Dabasir, do you have the soul of a free man or a slave?" I answered, "The soul of a free man." "Now's your chance to prove it. Your master is drunk, and his chiefs are asleep. Take these camels and escape. Here's some of your master's clothes to disguise yourself. I'll say you stole the camels." I didn't hesitate. I thanked her and fled into the night, heading for Babylon. My camels and I struggled across the desert. It was a journey few men survive. After days of hunger and thirst, I collapsed, too weak to continue. But as I lay there, I realized something. If I had the soul of a slave, I would give up and die. But if I had the soul of a free man, I would find a way to survive and return to Babylon to repay my debts and rebuild my life. In that moment, the world seemed different, as if I had taken off a colored stone and seen the truth for the first time. I knew what I had to do. I would return to Babylon, face my creditors, and make things right. I struggled to my feet, and my camels, sensing the change in me, got up as well. Together, we made our way back. We found water and food, and slowly made our way home. When we reached Babylon, I paid off every debt, and soon I was respected again. The soul of a free man had brought me back to honor. Dabasir paused in his story and looked at Tarkat. "And now, boy, what will you do? Will you continue to live like a slave, always borrowing but never repaying? Or will you rise and repay what you owe?" The Clay Tablets from Babylon. October 23rd, 1934. Dear Professor, the 5 clay tablets from your recent dig in the ruins of Babylon arrived on the same boat as your letter. I've been completely fascinated by them and have spent a lot of time translating the writing on them. I meant to reply to your letter right away, but I waited until I could finish the translations, which I've attached. The tablets came in perfect condition, thanks to your careful packing and use of preservatives. You'll be just as amazed as we were in the lab at the story they tell. When you expect the ancient past to be full of romance and adventure, like something out of Arabian Nights, it's a surprise to find it's about someone named Dabasir, who had to figure out how to pay off his debts. It makes you realize that things haven't really changed as much in 5,000 years as we might think. It's strange, but these old writings kind of annoy me, as the students would say. As a college professor, I'm supposed to be someone who knows a lot about many things. Yet here comes this ancient person from the ruins of Babylon, offering me a new way to pay off debts and even make some extra money. It's an interesting thought, and I'm curious to see if it would work as well today as it did back then. Mrs. Shrewsbury and I are planning to give his method a try, as it could really help improve our own situation. I wish you the best of luck with your work, and look forward to another chance to help. Sincerely, Alfred H. Shrewsbury, Department of Archaeology. Tablet number 1. When the moon becomes full, I, Dabasir, who has only recently returned from slavery in Syria, write this record on clay. I do this with the strong desire to repay my many rightful debts and become a man of wealth and respect in my home city of Babylon. Following the wise advice of my good friend Mathon, the moneylender, I am determined to stick to a clear plan. He says this plan will help any honest man escape debt and gain financial success and self-respect. This plan has 3 important goals that give me hope. First, the plan ensures that I build future wealth. Because of this, I will set aside 1/10 of all I earn as my own savings. Mathon speaks wisely when he says, "A man who keeps gold and silver in his purse and does not spend all he earns is good to his family and loyal to his king. A man with only a few coins in his purse is indifferent to both his family and his king. But a man with nothing in his purse becomes bitter, unkind to his family, and disloyal to his king. Therefore, any man who wants to succeed must save money so he can feel secure, love his family, and stay loyal to his king. Second, the plan ensures that I take care of my good wife, who has returned to me with love and loyalty from her father's house. Mathon says that providing well for a faithful wife brings a man's self-respect, strength, and determination. For this reason, I will use 7/10 of my earnings to provide a home, clothing, and food with a little extra for enjoyment. However, Mathon warns that we must be very careful not to spend more than this 7/10. This is the key to success. I must live within this portion, never spending more or buying anything I cannot afford within it. Tablet number 2. Third, the plan ensures that I will repay my debts from my earnings. So every time the moon becomes full, I will take 2/10 of all I have earned and fairly divide it among those who trusted me and to whom I owe money. In this way, over time, all my debts will be fully repaid. Because of this, I now write down the name of each person I owe and the honest amount of my debt. Fahru, the cloth weaver, 2 silver, 6 copper. Sinjar, the couchmaker, 1 silver. Ahmar, my friend, 3 silver, 1 copper. Zankar, my friend, 4 silver, 7 copper. Askamir, my friend, 1 silver, 3 copper. Heinze, the jewel maker, 6 silver, 2 copper. Diabeker, my father's friend, 4 silver, 1 copper. Alkahad, the house owner, 14 silver. Mathon, the moneylender, 9 silver. Birajik, the farmer, 1 silver, 7 copper. Tablet number 3. I owe my creditors a total of 119 pieces of silver and 141 pieces of copper. Because I owed these sums and saw no way to repay them, I foolishly let my wife return to her father. Then I left my home city to search for easy wealth elsewhere, only to find disaster and end up sold into the misery of slavery. Now that Mathon has shown me how to repay my debts little by little from my earnings, I realize how foolish I was to run away from the consequences of my reckless spending. So I have now visited my creditors and explained to them that I have no money to pay them except what I can earn. I have promised to use 2/10 of all I make to repay my debts fairly and honestly. This is all I can afford, but no more. If they are patient, in time, I will pay off everything I owe. Amar, whom I once thought was my best friend, spoke harshly against me, and I left him feeling ashamed. Birajik, the farmer, begged me to pay him first because he desperately needed help. Alkahad, the house owner, was very difficult and threatened to cause me trouble unless I paid him in full soon. All the others accepted my plan without complaint. Because of this, I am now more determined than ever to follow through. I am convinced that it is easier to repay one's debts than to avoid them. Even though I cannot meet the demands of every creditor right away, I will remain fair to all. Tablet number 4. Once again, the full moon shines. I have worked hard with a clear mind. My good wife has supported my decision to repay my debts. Because of our wise determination, I have earned 19 pieces of silver this past month by buying strong and healthy camels for Nebatur. I have divided this money according to my plan. I set aside 1/10 as my own savings, and my wife and I used 7/10 for our living expenses. The remaining 2/10 I divided as fairly as possible among my creditors in copper coins. I did not see Amar, but I left his share with his wife. Birajik was so pleased that he wanted to kiss my hand. Only old Alkahad was still grumpy and demanded that I pay him faster. I told him that if I was allowed to be well fed and free from worry, I would be able to pay him faster. The others thanked me and spoke kindly of my efforts. At the end of 1 month, my debt has been reduced by almost 4 pieces of silver, and I now have almost 2 pieces of silver that belong only to me. My heart feels lighter than it has in a long time. Once again, the full moon shines. I have worked hard, but earned little. I was able to buy only a few camels and made just 11 pieces of silver. Still, my wife and I remained faithful to the plan. We bought no new clothes and ate mostly herbs, but we still followed our system. I saved 1/10 of my earnings. We lived on 7/10, and I paid 2/10 to my creditors. To my surprise, Amar praised my payment, even though it was small. Birajik did the same. Alkahad was furious, but when I told him he could give back his share if he didn't want it, he calmed down. The rest, as before, were satisfied. Once again, the full moon shines, and I am filled with joy. I found a fine herd of camels and bought many strong ones, earning 42 pieces of silver this month. This time, my wife and I bought much-needed sandals and clothing. We also enjoyed good meals with meat and fowl. We paid over 8 pieces of silver to our creditors, and even Alkahad had no complaints. This plan is truly great. It is leading us out of debt and giving us wealth that is ours to keep. 3 full moons have passed since I last wrote on this clay tablet. Each time, I have saved 1/10 of what I earned. Each time, my wife and I have lived on 7/10, even when it was difficult. Each time, I have paid 2/10 to my creditors. Now, I have 21 pieces of silver in my purse that belong only to me. I walk with my head held high, proud among my friends. My wife keeps our home well and dresses beautifully. We are happy together. This plan is priceless. Has it not turned a former slave into an honorable man? Tablet number 5. Once again, the full moon shines, and I realize it has been a long time since I last wrote on this clay tablet. 12 full moons have come and gone. But today I will not forget to record this moment, because today I have paid off the last of my debts. This is a day of great celebration for my good wife and me. We are feasting in joy because our determination has brought us success. I will always remember my final visit to my creditors. Amar apologized for his harsh words and told me that of all people, he now valued me most as a friend. Even old Alkahad turned out to be kinder than I expected. He said, "You used to be like soft clay, shaped by anyone who touched you. But now you are like bronze, strong and sharp. If you ever need silver or gold, come to me." And he was not the only one who now respects me. Many others speak to me with admiration. My good wife looks at me with a light in her eyes that fills me with confidence. Yet it is the plan that has brought me success. It allowed me to pay all my debts and still have gold and silver jingling in my purse. I recommend it to anyone who wants to get ahead in life. If it could help a former slave like me, can it not help any man gain financial freedom? And I am not finished with this plan. I now believe that if I continue to follow it, it will make me a wealthy man. November 7th, 1936. Dear Professor, if, while digging in the ruins of Babylon, you happen to come across the ghost of an old camel trader named Dabasir, please do me a favor. Tell him that his writings on those ancient clay tablets have earned him the lifelong gratitude of a couple of college folks here in England. You may remember that a year ago, my wife and I decided to try his plan to get out of debt and save money. What you may not have known is how desperate our situation was. For years, we were weighed down by old debts, constantly afraid that some shopkeeper would cause a scandal that might force me out of my job at the college. We paid what little we could, but it was never enough to make real progress. On top of that, we had to buy everything on credit, often at higher prices. It became a vicious cycle, getting worse instead of better. We couldn't move to cheaper housing because we owed rent. There seemed to be no way out. Then along came your old acquaintance, the camel trader from Babylon, with a plan that promised exactly what we needed. His words inspired us to take action. We listed all our debts and visited each person we owed. I explained that it was impossible for us to pay them in full under our current situation. The numbers made it clear. So, I proposed a solution. We would set aside 20% of my income each month and divide it fairly among all creditors. This way, we could pay everything off in just over 2 years. In the meantime, we would stop borrowing and start paying cash for everything, giving them the added benefit of our cash business. To my surprise, they were quite reasonable. Our greengrocer, an older man with good sense, explained it best to the others. If you pay for what you buy and also pay something toward your debt, that's better than what you've done in the last 3 years. Eventually, they all agreed. I even got them to sign an agreement promising not to trouble us as long as we made our payments on time. Next, my wife and I had to figure out how to live on just 70% of my income. We were determined to keep that extra 10% for ourselves. The idea of having money to jingle in our pockets was too exciting to ignore. It became an adventure. We enjoyed the challenge of adjusting our spending to fit within our budget. First, we renegotiated our rent and got a small reduction. Then, we examined our favorite brands of tea and other goods and discovered we could buy better quality for less money elsewhere. This letter is already long, but let me just say, it wasn't as hard as we expected. We managed quite well, and with a cheerful attitude. What a relief it was to finally have our finances under control, free from the fear of overdue bills. Now, about that extra 10% we were supposed to save. At first, we simply jingled it in our pockets for fun. Don't laugh. It was thrilling to hold on to money we didn't have to spend. But soon, we found a better use for it. We invested it. Each month, we used that 10% to fund an investment that is now steadily growing. It's the first thing we pay out of my salary, and the feeling of security it gives us is beyond words. By the time I retire from teaching, our investment should be large enough to support us comfortably. All of this, paying off our debts, building an investment, and even living better than before, has been done with the same salary I've always had. It's hard to believe, but absolutely true. The difference between following a financial plan and simply drifting along is astonishing. By this time next year, when our debts are completely paid, we'll be able to invest even more and maybe even save for travel. We are determined never again to let our living expenses exceed 70% of our income. Now you can understand why we wish we could personally thank that old Babylonian trader whose wisdom saved us from our own hell on earth. He knew what he was talking about. He had suffered just as we had, and he wanted to help others avoid his mistakes. That's why he spent so many hours carving his message into clay. His words were so powerful that even after 5,000 years, they still hold true. Yours sincerely, Department of Archaeology. The Luckiest Man in Babylon. At the front of his caravan proudly rode Sharu Nada, the wealthy merchant of Babylon. He liked fine clothes and wore rich, impressive robes. He loved good animals and sat comfortably on his fast Arabian horse. If you looked at him, you would hardly think he was old, though inside he was troubled. The journey from Damascus was long, and the desert was harsh. But he didn't mind those challenges. The Arab tribes were fierce and often attacked rich caravans, but he wasn't afraid. His many fast guards kept him safe. But he was troubled by the youth beside him, a young man he was bringing from Damascus. This was Hardan Gula, the grandson of his old business partner, Arad Gula, a man Sharu Nada felt he owed a lot to. He wanted to help this young man, but the more he thought about it, the harder it seemed. The problem was with the young man himself. Hardan Gula, looking at Sharu Nada, suddenly asked, "Why do you work so hard, always traveling with your caravan on these long journeys? Don't you ever take time to enjoy life?" Sharu Nada smiled. "Enjoy life?" he repeated. "What would you do to enjoy life if you were Sharu Nada? If I had wealth like yours, I would live like a prince. I wouldn't cross the hot desert. I'd spend the money as fast as it came to me. I'd wear the finest robes and rarest jewels. That's the kind of life I'd want." They both laughed. "Your grandfather didn't wear jewels," Sharu Nada said jokingly. "Would you have no time for work?" "Work is for slaves," Hardan Gula replied. Sharu Nada bit his lip but didn't answer. He rode in silence until the trail led them to a hill. He stopped and pointed to the green valley below. "Look, that's the valley. If you look closely, you might see the walls of Babylon. The tower you see is the Temple of Bel. If you look carefully, you might even see the smoke from the eternal fire at the top. That's Babylon. I've always wanted to see the richest city in the world," Hardan Gula said. "Babylon, where my grandfather started his fortune. I wish he was still alive. Things wouldn't be so hard for us. Why would you want his spirit to stay on earth longer? You and your father can carry on his good work. Sadly, neither my father nor I have his talent. We don't know his secret for making money." Sharu Nada didn't answer. He just turned his horse and rode thoughtfully down the path to the valley, the caravan following behind, kicking up dust. After some time, they reached the King's Highway and turned south, passing irrigated farms. 3 old men plowing a field caught Sharu Nada's attention. They seemed strangely familiar. "That's silly," he thought. "You don't pass a field after 40 years and find the same men plowing there." But still, something told him they were the same. One man held the plow unsteadily. The others struggled to keep the oxen moving, hitting them with sticks. 40 years ago, Sharu Nada had envied these men. How he had wished he could trade places with them. But now he felt differently. He looked proudly at his caravan, loaded with expensive goods from Damascus. Still plowing the same field they did 40 years ago, he said. They look like it, but why do you think they're the same? Hadangula asked. I saw them there, Sharu Nada replied. His mind was racing with old memories. Why couldn't he forget the past and live in the present? Then he suddenly remembered the face of Arad Gula. The distance between himself and the cynical young man beside him disappeared. But how could he help such a proud youth with his extravagant ideas and bejeweled hands? He could offer work to those who wanted it, but not to those who thought they were too good for it. Still, he owed something to Arad Gula. He and Arad had never done things halfway. They were not that kind of men. A plan formed quickly in his mind. There were objections, though. He had to think about his own family and his own reputation. It would be hard, but he decided to act. Would you be interested in hearing how your grandfather and I formed the partnership that made us rich? Sharu Nada asked. Why not just tell me how you made your fortune? That's all I need to know, Hadan Gula replied. Ignoring the response, Sharu Nada continued, We start with those men plowing. I was no older than you. As we passed, an old farmer named Megiddo, who was chained to me, commented on the poor way the men plowed. Look at them, he said. The plowman isn't doing it right, and the others aren't keeping the oxen in line. How can they expect a good crop with this poor plowing? Did you say Megiddo was chained to you? Hadan Gula asked. Yes, with bronze collars and chains. I was chained to him, and we were part of a group of men walking in fours. Megiddo was beside me, and next to him was Zabado, a thief from Harun. The last man in our group was called Pirate because we didn't know his real name. He had tattoos of serpents, which made us think he might be a sailor. You were chained as a slave? Hatangula asked in surprise. Didn't your grandfather tell you I was once a slave? Sharu Nada replied. He spoke of you often, but never of this, Hadan Gula said, amazed. It's something no one ever talks about, Sharu Nada replied. I was sold as a slave because of my brother's mistakes. He killed someone, and to save him, my father couldn't pay enough to free me. So I was sold. What a shame, Hadan Gula exclaimed. Sharu Nada nodded. But let's get back to the story. As we passed those plowing men, they mocked us. One of them took off his hat and bowed low, shouting, Welcome to Babylon, guests of the king. Come to the city where the banquet is mud bricks and onion soup. Pirate got angry at this and cursed them. What do they mean by saying the king awaits us at the walls? I asked. They think we're headed to the walls to carry bricks until we break our backs, Pirate replied angrily. I won't be beaten, I'll kill them first. Megiddo spoke up. It doesn't make sense to me to talk about masters beating hard-working slaves. Masters like good slaves and treat them well. Who wants to work hard? Zabado said. Those plowing men are smart. They don't break their backs. They act like they're working, but they aren't. Shirking won't get you ahead, Megiddo said. If you plow a field, you work hard. If you only do half, that's shirking. I like to work hard because work has brought me everything good in life. Yeah, and where's all that now? Zabado scoffed. I bet it's better to be smart and avoid hard work. That night, Nada couldn't sleep. He thought about Megiddo's words. What if work could be his best friend too? He asked the guard, Godoso, when we get to Babylon, will we be sold to the walls? Godoso whispered back, if you want a good master, show them you're a hard worker. If you don't, you'll end up carrying bricks and working until you drop. Nada thought about that. When they reached Babylon, he was sold, but he found a good master, a baker named Nananaid. He worked hard for him and made himself valuable. He asked if he could sell honey cakes on the street in the afternoons, and Nananaid agreed. Soon, Nada made enough money to buy his freedom. He was thin and bent, with scars on his back from the overseer's whips. I felt sorry for him and gave him a cake which he ate fast, like a hungry animal. When I saw the greedy look in his eyes, I ran before he could take my tray. Why do you work so hard? Aradgula asked me one day, almost the same question you asked today. I told him what Megiddo had said about work and how it had become my best friend. I proudly showed him my wallet of pennies and explained that I was saving to buy my freedom. When you're free, what will you do? And he asked. I plan to become a merchant, I answered. Then he shared something I hadn't expected. You don't know that I am also a slave. I am in partnership with my master. Stop, Aradgula interrupted. I will not listen to lies about my grandfather. He was no slave. Nada stayed calm. I honor him for rising above his past and becoming a leading citizen of Damascus. But do you think you can live under false illusions, or are you brave enough to face the truth? Aradgula straightened up. Everyone loved my grandfather. When the famine came, didn't his gold buy grain in Egypt and bring it to Damascus to feed the people? Now you say he was a hated slave in Babylon. If he had stayed a slave in Babylon, people might have hated him. But through his own hard work, he became great in Damascus, and the gods rewarded him, Nada replied.